All right, today we're going to dive deep. I mean, really deep. We're going into a world that's pretty much invisible, but it literally powers our entire planet. We're talking about algae. And no, not just as pond scum, but as the main characters in this epic story of theft, partnership, and all-out war that has shaped every single living thing on Earth. So let's get into it.
First, just do me a quick favor, wherever you are. Take a big, deep breath. Go ahead. In and out. Pretty nice, right?
Well, guess what? You can thank algae for about half the oxygen that was in that very breath. Yeah, you heard that right. These tiny, tiny organisms are cranking out about half the oxygen for the whole world through photosynthesis. They are, in a very real way, the planet's other lung. So how did this global powerhouse even get started? Well, it wasn't some gentle, peaceful beginning. Nope, it was more like a heist, a microscopic crime that completely hijacked the course of evolution forever. Our story kicks off about 1.6 billion years ago. Yeah, billion with a B. And it all started with what should have been just a regular meal. A single cell swallowed another. But what happened next wasn't digestion. It was the beginning of a revolutionary team-up that would eventually explode into the incredible diversity of algae we see all over the world today. Now, the scientific name for this crazy event is primary endosymbiosis. But here's what it really means. A host cell ate a cyanobacterium. That's a type of bacteria that already knew how to photosynthesize, but instead of dissolving it for lunch, the host cell kept it. It became like a permanent, live-in solar power plant. We call that little power plant the plastid now, and that single event, it's the ancestor of all red, green, and glaucophyte algae. And that right there leads to a massive scientific puzzle. I mean, if getting the ability to turn sunlight into food is such a huge advantage, why has this amazing trick been so incredibly rare? The oceans have been packed with hungry protists and photosynthesizing bacteria for billions of years, so why didn't this happen all the time? And the heart of the mystery is right here, in this quote. The absolute biggest hurdle, the most critical innovation, is figuring out how to not get digested. Think about it. The host's entire biology is screaming, break it down, get the nutrients. So the very first problem for any potential partner is just surviving being eaten. So how did that first little cyanobacterium pull it off? Well, there's this one wild, kind of controversial theory that says it had help. This wasn't a deal between two partners, it was a deal between three. Welcome to the ménage à trois hypothesis. Okay, picture this three-act play. First, the invasion. The host cell swallows the cyanobacterium, but it also swallows a nasty little pathogenic bacterium, something kind of like modern chlamydia. Second, protection. This pathogen is already an expert at hiding inside cells, so it creates a protective little bubble, shielding itself and the cyanobacterium from getting dissolved. And third, the payment. The pathogen basically acts as a middleman. It steals the sugar made by the cyanobacterium and funnels it to the host, paying a kind of rent to make sure the whole operation stays safe. It's an absolutely incredible story of a microbial bargain. So that ancient act of Grand Theft Auto laid the foundation for some of the most important partnerships on Earth today. Let's zoom in on one of the most famous and beautiful, the relationship between algae and corals. This isn't just a simple team-up, it's a bustling, vibrant underwater city built on an incredibly fragile alliance. And when I say fragile, the stakes could not be higher. Get this, over 90% of the food a reef-building coral gets comes directly from those tiny algae, called symbiodinium, that live inside its tissues. The coral gives them a safe place to live, and the algae pay the rent with almost all the food. On the left, you see what that looks like when everything's going right. A thriving, colorful reef. It's beautiful. But when that alliance shatters, usually because of stress from things like rising ocean temperatures, the coral literally kicks its algae out. That's coral bleaching, what you see on the right. The coral loses its color, sure, but way more importantly, it loses its main food source. It is literally starving to death. And here's the kicker. The coral is not just a passive landlord in this deal, it's an active business partner. Check out this chart. Research has found that coral tissue concentrates the raw material for photosynthesis, inorganic carbon, to levels 70 times higher than the seawater around it. It's basically pumping fuel directly to its tenants to supercharge their productivity. It's an incredible system. But life isn't all cooperation and teamwork, right? The microscopic world is also a battlefield. So let's shift gears from partnership to outright conflict and look at the epic, high-stakes arms race between algae and the viruses that hunt them down. So this is Emiliana huxley. It's a type of algae that can form these enormous blooms, so vast they can actually be seen from space. They turn thousands of square kilometers of the ocean this incredible milky turquoise color. They're a huge deal in the marine ecosystem. But these giant blooms have a mortal enemy, a massive virus known as ELV. This virus is a specialist, a highly evolved algal assassin that can infect and wipe out an entire bloom in just a few days. It's a boom and bust cycle on a planetary scale. And the virus's strategy is just brutally efficient. It gets inside the algal cell, seizes control of all its internal machinery, and completely reprograms its entire metabolism. The alga stops working for itself and is forced to become a factory, just churning out hundreds and hundreds of new viruses. And this isn't a simple takeover, it's a complete metabolic rewiring. Look at this table. The virus actually carries its own genes to make specific kinds of fats or lipids. It shuts down the alga's production and then ramps up its own, building the exact parts it needs for new virus particles. It's a biochemical arms race happening inside a single cell. So we've seen theft, we've seen partnership, and we've seen conflict. What do all these incredible stories tell us? Well, they all point to this really profound new understanding of life itself, that no organism is truly an island. Life is a team sport. This brings us to the really big idea here, a concept in biology called the holobiont. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it changes everything. It says we shouldn't just look at a single plant or animal. We should be looking at the host plus all of its resident microbes, its algae, its bacteria, its viruses, as one single co-evolving team. And once you start to see things this way, your perspective just totally shifts. A coral isn't just an animal, it's a holobiont, a walking, talking ecosystem. An algal cell isn't just floating alone, it's the center of a whole community of bacteria and viruses it's constantly interacting with. All those neat lines we like to draw between individuals, they start to dissolve into this complex, beautiful web of connections. And that leaves us with a really critical question for our future. If life isn't really about individuals, but about these deeply interconnected systems, what does that mean for how we try to protect it? It's not enough anymore to just save a species. We have to start asking ourselves, how do we protect the connections themselves?